Most people wait to feel motivated. They wait for the right mood, the right time, the right feeling. They tell themselves, I will start tomorrow. I will do it when I feel ready. But that moment rarely comes. Because motivation is not stable. It changes. It comes and goes. Some days you feel strong. Some days you feel lazy. Some days you feel like doing everything. And some days you don't feel like doing anything at all. If your actions depend on motivation, your progress will always be inconsistent. You will start things, but you will not finish them. You will feel excited in the beginning, but that excitement will fade. And once it fades, you stop. This is the cycle most people live in. They depend on feelings. But feelings are not reliable. They change too quickly. And anything that depends on something unstable cannot produce stable results. This is where discipline becomes important. Discipline does not depend on feelings. It does not care if you feel motivated or not. It does not wait for the perfect time. It simply follows a decision to act, a decision to continue, a decision to do what needs to be done even when you don't feel like doing it. This is what makes discipline powerful. It removes emotions from action. Instead of asking, do I feel like doing this? You start asking, does this need to be done? And if the answer is yes, you do it. No overthinking, no delay, no excuses. This simple shift changes everything. Because now, your progress is not controlled by your mood. It is controlled by your actions. And actions, when repeated daily, create results. At first, discipline feels difficult because your mind resists it. It looks for comfort. It looks for ease. It looks for distraction. It tells you to rest, to delay, to avoid effort. And if you listen to it, you stay the same. But if you go against it, something begins to change. You start building control. Control over your actions, control over your habits, control over your time. And slowly, this control becomes stronger. You no longer need motivation to start. You start automatically. You no longer need reminders. You follow your routine. You no longer depend on how you feel. You depend on what you decided. And that is the difference between average people and disciplined people. Average people wait. Disciplined people act. Average people depend on mood. Disciplined people depend on structure. Average people stop when it gets hard. Disciplined people continue anyway. This is why discipline leads to success, not because it is easy, but because it is consistent. Consistency is what creates results, not intensity, not short bursts of effort, but small actions repeated every day. This is something most people ignore. They want fast results. They want big changes quickly. But real progress is slow. It happens step by step, day by day. And discipline helps you stay on that path, even when you don't see results immediately, even when it feels like nothing is changing, even when it becomes boring. Because discipline does not rely on excitement. It relies on commitment. A commitment to keep going, no matter what. And over time, this commitment builds something powerful. Momentum. Once you build momentum, everything becomes easier. You don't have to force yourself as much. You don't have to struggle to start. Because action becomes a habit. And habits define your life. What you do daily becomes who you are. If you act with discipline daily, you become disciplined. If you act with inconsistency, you remain inconsistent. It is that simple. So the question is not, do you feel motivated? The real question is, are you disciplined enough to act anyway?
At this point, you understand the difference between motivation and discipline. But understanding is not enough, because knowledge without action changes nothing. Most people already know what they should do. They know they should wake up early. They know they should work on their goals. They know they should avoid distractions. But knowing does not mean doing. And this is where most people fail. They stay in the stage of thinking. They plan. They imagine. They wait. But they do not act. Because action requires effort. And effort is uncomfortable. So the mind looks for an easier option. It delays. It postpones. It creates excuses. I will start tomorrow. I will do it later. I am not ready yet. These thoughts feel logical. But in reality, they are just ways to avoid effort. And the longer you listen to them, the weaker your discipline becomes. Because every time you delay action, you train your mind to avoid responsibility. You teach yourself that it is okay to not do what needs to be done. And over time, this becomes a habit of delay, a habit of excuses, a habit of inaction. This is why discipline is not just about doing hard things. It is about breaking this pattern. The pattern of avoiding action, the pattern of choosing comfort over progress. And this requires awareness. You have to notice when your mind is trying to escape, when it is trying to delay, when it is trying to avoid effort. Because if you don't notice it, you will follow it automatically. But once you become aware, you can make a different choice. Instead of delaying, you act. Instead of avoiding, you begin. Even if it is small, even if it is not perfect, even if you don't feel ready, because starting is more important than waiting. Most people wait for perfect conditions, but perfect conditions never exist. There will always be something missing: time, energy, confidence. If you wait for everything to be perfect, you will never start. This is why disciplined people act anyway. They do not wait for perfect conditions. They create progress in imperfect situations, and that is what moves them forward. Small actions, repeated consistently, create momentum, and momentum reduces resistance. Once you start, continuing becomes easier, but the hardest part is always the beginning. This is why you must train yourself to start without thinking too much. Do not wait for motivation. Do not wait for the right feeling. Just begin. Take the first step, no matter how small. Because action creates clarity. Not thinking, not planning, but doing. When you act, you learn. You understand what works. You see what needs to improve. And that helps you grow. But if you stay in your mind, thinking about everything, you stay stuck. No progress, no change. Just ideas without results. This is the difference between people who succeed and people who stay the same. One group acts, the other group thinks. And over time, this difference becomes massive. Because every day of action moves you forward, and every day of delay keeps you in the same place. Discipline is what pushes you to act, even when you don't feel like it, even when it is difficult, even when it is boring. Because not every day will feel exciting. Not every day will feel productive, but every day matters. And what you do on those days decides your future. So instead of asking, do I feel like doing this? Start asking, what happens if I don't? Because the cost of an action is always greater than the cost of effort. Effort is temporary, but regret lasts much longer. And discipline protects you from regret. It pushes you to act now, so you don't suffer later. It builds consistency. It builds progress. It builds results. And over time, it builds a stronger version of you. Someone who does not wait. Someone who does not make excuses. Someone who takes action, no matter what.
At this stage, discipline is no longer just an action. It becomes part of your identity. You are no longer trying to be disciplined. You become a disciplined person. And this changes everything. Because when something becomes your identity, you do it naturally. You do not question it. You do not debate it. You do not delay it. You simply follow it. This is the level most people never reach because they treat discipline like a temporary effort. They try it for a few days, maybe a few weeks, but when it becomes difficult, they stop. And when they stop, they go back to their old habits. This is why consistency is more important than intensity. Doing something every day, even in small amounts, is more powerful than doing a lot once in a while. Because consistency builds identity. Every time you act with discipline, you send a signal to your mind. I am someone who follows through. I am someone who does what needs to be done. And the more you repeat this, the stronger that identity becomes. Over time, you stop seeing discipline as effort. You see it as normal. This is when it becomes powerful, because now you are not forcing yourself anymore. You are simply being yourself. But reaching this stage requires patience. You cannot rush it. You cannot skip steps. It is built slowly through daily actions, through small choices made again and again. Waking up on time, working when you don't feel like it, avoiding distractions, staying focused. These actions may seem small, but they are not. They are building your identity, and your identity controls your life. If you see yourself as someone who is lazy, you will act accordingly. If you see yourself as someone who is disciplined, you will act differently. This is why mindset is important. Not what you say, but what you believe about yourself. And belief is built through action, not words, not motivation, but repeated behavior. If you act with discipline daily, you start believing in your ability. You trust yourself more. You rely on yourself more. And that confidence is very powerful. Because now, you do not depend on external motivation. You do not need someone to push you. You push yourself. This is where real growth begins. Because now, you are in control. Not your emotions, not your mood, not your environment, but you. And when you have that control, you can handle anything. Difficult tasks, long-term goals, unexpected challenges. Because you know you will not quit. You will continue, no matter how you feel. This level of discipline creates long-term success, not temporary results, not short bursts of progress, but steady growth. Growth that continues day after day, year after year. This is how strong people are built, not in a single moment, but over time, through consistency, through discipline, through patience. While others are looking for quick results, you are building something lasting. And that difference becomes visible with time, because results always reveal the truth. They show who stayed consistent and who gave up. They show who was disciplined and who depended on motivation. So if you want real change, you have to think long-term, not days, not weeks, but years. You have to accept that progress will be slow, that results will take time, that there will be moments of difficulty, moments where you feel like stopping. But those moments are part of the process. They are not obstacles, they are tests. Tests of your discipline, tests of your commitment. And every time you pass those tests, you become stronger, more stable, more focused, and more in control of your life. This is the true power of discipline. It transforms you, not just your actions, but your identity. And once your identity changes, your life changes with it.
After building discipline, after repeating the same actions again and again, after staying consistent even when it was difficult, something begins to change. Not just in what you do, but in who you are. You become more stable. You do not depend on motivation anymore. You do not wait for the right feeling. You act because it is part of you. And this creates a different kind of confidence. Not loud confidence, not something you show to others, but quiet confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you can trust yourself. You trust that you will show up. You trust that you will continue. You trust that you will not quit easily. And this trust is built through discipline. Because every time you follow through, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you are reliable. You prove that your actions match your decisions. And slowly, this builds self-respect. Self-respect is not given by others. It is earned through consistency, through doing what you said you would do, even when it is hard, even when no one is watching. And once you build self-respect, everything changes. You stop tolerating laziness. You stop accepting excuses. You stop settling for less. Because you know your value. And that value comes from your actions, not your words, not your intentions, but your daily behavior. This is why discipline is life-changing. It does not just improve your routine, it improves your standards. and higher standards lead to a better life. You start expecting more from yourself. You stop doing things that waste your time. You become more selective about your habits, about your environment, about how you spend your time. Because you understand something important. Time is limited. And once it is gone, it does not come back. So instead of wasting it, you use it. You invest it in things that matter. Things that move you forward. Things that build your future. This is the mindset of a disciplined person. They do not look for comfort. They look for progress, even if it is slow, even if it is difficult. Because they understand that long-term results require long-term effort. There is no shortcut, no easy way, only consistent work, done over time. This is what creates real change. And this is why discipline always wins. It wins over motivation. It wins over talent. It wins over temporary effort. Because discipline stays. It does not disappear when things get hard. It does not depend on emotions. It continues, no matter what. And that consistency creates results. Results that speak for themselves. Results that show the difference between those who acted and those who waited. Between those who stayed consistent and those who gave up. In the end, it is not about how you start. It is about how you continue. Anyone can feel motivated for a short time, but very few people can stay disciplined for a long time. And that is what separates them. So the question is not, are you motivated? The real question is, are you willing to stay consistent even when it is hard? Because that is what will decide your future. Not your feelings, not your excuses, but your actions. Repeated every day, for a long time, until they become part of you. And once that happens, success is no longer a question. It becomes a result of discipline, a result of consistency, a result of who you have become.